Okay, so this is something that a lot of people are probably going to find disappointing as it relates to the Smash Brothers series because people have loved, Super Smash Brothers since the series first began in the late 90s on the N64. But the latest game that came out, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate from 2018, is probably the greatest installment of all time. And some would beg to differ because they'll go on record and say that Super Smash Brothers Melee from the early 2000s was the best. I mean, it's probably more iconic than Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, but Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has sold more than any other installment within its series. It managed to sell over 31 million copies worldwide, and it's I think it's like the third best selling like Switch game out there, and pretty much like something that has been circulating on various websites or gaming websites is the fact that apparently Nintendo plans on enforcing new rules concerning, I guess, community tournaments and all that stuff. And pretty much these restrictions and these rules could be something that eventually ends up driving casuals away from Super Smash Brothers. And the reason I say that is because they got it where, like, I guess tournaments can only be limited up to 200 participants, which is something that's reasonable. But people who host tournaments will be unable to set prizes above 5 grand, and they'll be unable to have sponsors and all that stuff. And also, tournament organizers, they won't be able to have food in terms of like selling it. They wouldn't be able to sell beverages or merchandise. And obviously, like, my opinion is the reason why Nintendo is cracking down on that is because you think of the sponsors, you think of merchandise, you think of food and beverages. Um, Nintendo can't necessarily monetize any of that. So they're cracking down on all the stuff that they can't monetize that I guess people profit off of when they host these tournaments. And honestly, I feel like that's one of the reasons why Super Smash Bros. Ultimate um, became as popular as it did, aside from the fact that it's a superb fighting game with an excellent story, a all-star like roster of characters and DLC content and characters. I feel like the community tournaments are things that draw casuals in, and having these restrictions could eventually turn people off to Super Smash Brothers. Now, don't get me wrong. There's always going to be that niche audience of gamers who's going to love everything Nintendo creates and all the Smash Brother games that they have come out and that they're probably going to come out with in the future. But the thing is, it's something that it's going to prove to be problematic in the future because I believe it was reported earlier this year that Nintendo had they was on the receiving end of a lawsuit because of the hidden microtransactions that was included in the Mario Kart World Tour game that was on iOS because of like hidden fees and all that stuff. And if that is the case, it's like you can't have an issue where you're using microtransactions in one game and at the same time you're trying to crack down on tournaments for having sponsors and all that stuff. And the thing is, I mean, this whole thing is kind of, it gets kind of messy because some people can go on record and say, yeah, they purchased the game, so technically it's my property and I can do what I want with it. But then you look at Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, it's the intellectual property of Nintendo. So I think that's where like the issue comes in. And I don't think Nintendo has ever really they never really cared about this in the past because I know with Super Smash Brothers Melee, like at least a decade after the game was released, they were hosting tournaments, and I'm pretty sure the stuff that I just mentioned with like sponsors and high prizes and all that stuff were always a thing in the past. But it seems like nowadays, for whatever reason, Nintendo is cracking down on it, and unfortunately, that's something that's not going to be great for, I guess, casuals, not going to be great probably for esports events because we have no idea how far this is going to go, how deep these crackdowns are going to run. And because of that, I mean, A lot of people are curious about what the future of the Smash Brothers series is going to look like, and we're definitely going to get another Smash Brothers game for the Switch 2 console or Nintendo's next gen console, whatever they decide to call it. But these rules, I feel like, is something that's going to like slowly drain all the fun out of Nintendo's Smash Brothers game and any other Nintendo game they have coming out in the future because at one point Nintendo was fun and they were known for giving people what they want and being creative and innovative and all that stuff. And they are still those things to an extent. But, if they're gonna continue, doing stuff like this where esports have to be regulated a certain way or they're placing limits and bans on stuff like that. I feel like it's going to be something that's going to be detrimental to Nintendo in the future, but at the same time, um, I guess like with stuff like this, they could potentially avoid bad PR concerning like people using their video game to potentially violate laws or whatever involving like monetizing or what have you. But either way, this is something that's kind of a bummer for a lot of people, and I don't know. We'll just have to see what type of effect Nintendo's new restrictions is going to have on their games in the future.